So, hello and welcome to Intuitive Connection. I'm your host, intuitive counselor and spiritual guide, Victoria Shaw. And today, you guys are in for a treat. We have a really cool guest. I just finished reading her book, and I'm really excited to share her magic with you. Her name is Bonnie Buckner, PhD, and she is the founder and CEO of the International Institute for Dreaming and Imagery. And she's also the author of The Secret Mind. Unlock the Power of Dreams to Transform Your Life. And I love the book. And let's see, there's a long list of wonderful things about you. You are the co-host of One Humanity Labs podcast. You have a blog, The Secret Mind on Psychology Today. Did I miss anything? You are on the faculty at George Washington University.
I'm the program lead of their coaching program, the One Humanity coaching program.
Beautiful. All right. So much magic. And one of the things that I love about you is the way, and we'll talk about this as we get into this, is the way that you combine kind of the spiritual, the esoteric work with the psychology and the neuroscience. So I'm really excited for this conversation and to talk about dreams. So Bonnie, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And you have an interesting story because, you kind of discovered your life's work kind of very early on. Is that right?
Well, I did and I didn't. I did. So when I was 3, I was having so many nightmares. And one morning I was sitting out and I was thinking about it, reflecting on it. And as a little kid, I was thinking, okay, I'm never going to sleep again. What are all the tricks I can do to not go to sleep? And I just kept sort of pondering it, and it kind of hit me, oh, this is what I'm here to do. I have to figure out how to fix my nightmares because I can't stay awake forever. So I have to fix it, and then I have to teach that to others. So I did. But then, life progresses, and I was in school, and what are you going to declare as a major? And it's very difficult to say I'm going to teach people dreaming. And so my life found all kinds of different paths, and then came back here.
Beautiful. I love that. And I love that insight at 3, because that's pretty heavy duty for a 3-year-old to have that realization. But I love that.
I think a lot of kids actually do, but then it gets sort of put aside. And one of the things that helped me a lot is I spoke about it, and my family was super open to it. And my dad and my grandmother in particular shared their dreams with me. And so it was sort of kept alive in that way.
So you were doing this kind of work and this connection all through your life, even before you came back to that as a professional path.
Yeah, it never left me. I just it was like I had 2 tracks. I knew I was doing dreaming work, but then, and this was one of the great insights that my father gave me, he said, try and find a vehicle that you're passionate about and kind of let the dreams be in that. And so I worked in Hollywood for some time because of the way images move us and stories move us. And I worked in politics for a time and community development because that's also about using imagery and all of it to hopefully make our lives better. And so it was kind of always there. And then I finally brought the tracks together.
How did they come together? Because that's a powerful story right there. And I feel like a lot of people now are kind of coming to the end of the this is what I thought I should do phase of life. And coming back to those dreams that we had when we were like 3, 5, 7, in those times when we were still connected more deeply with who we really are.
Yeah, so through a series of dreams, I met my dreaming teacher, and I'd been studying with her, and I knew I needed to make the leap, and I was living 2 weeks out of the month in Los Angeles and 2 weeks out of the month in DC. So I was working 2 companies that I owned at the same time. And to fly to DC from LA, to get on the freeway to go to LAX, I had to pass this house where this lady had a big sign that said palm reading, $25. And it had Christmas tree lights out all the time, all year round. And I just had this sense to me of like, oh no, if I leave my work and I do that for a living, then somehow I'm going to be, tucked away by a freeway on-ramp, which is fine. I'm not denigrating that, but it just was such a contrast for me. And I thought, I don't know how to make this leap. And then it just became so pressing. And I knew I can't deny me. me. I'm here. This is what I have to do. And so, around that moment when I came to it within myself, my dream teacher said, I think you're pointed towards going back to school, getting your PhD in psychology. And then I just went.
Wow. And so that's how you can combine sort of that PhD, that psychology training with the dream work.
Well, I went into it. So, image has always been a big thing for me, how images move us. And, we're moved by images in politics, we're moved by images in movies. And so, I studied the cognitive neuroscience behind images, both the images on the outside and images in our internal imagery, and why that's sort of the nexus for thought, action, and behavioral change.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I'm getting tingles. Years ago, many, many, many years ago, I was also a cognitive psychologist. But I studied logic and reasoning. So the other end of that spectrum. But it's really, really interesting too. So I'm going to throw this out there. This is a little bit of a curveball. But what would you say to those of us who are not natural imaginers? So obviously I get imagery and dreams. There's nothing wrong with my brain that I know of. But even in my intuitive work, imagery and the visual sense was the last one to kick in. And I'm not someone that can like easily visualize in my mind. So I would love to just take a little side door and talk about that, because there are differences, right, in how we imagine things.
Well, it's everybody's sort of internal language. So, of course, there are. And so, for example, if I'm, working with someone, I may see a sentence. So you can say that that's not an image, but that's how it's coming through to me in that moment. So we all have our own way, and that way is also fluid. Sometimes it's just an image, sometimes it's that, sometimes it's a felt sense, sometimes it's
Yeah.
color.
Yeah, I'm very kinesthetic, and I had a guest on the show not so long ago who's a medium, and I've quoted him so many times now, because the way he explained it was so clearly. He's like, I don't see things. So if I say like, oh, I see a man with a hat, I'm not actually seeing it in my mind's eye. I'm sensing it. Right. And I think too, like the way that I understand it, especially when we're talking about our extrasensory senses, a lot of times it's like more like synesthesia, right? It's kind of blended together. And I think the dream world's a little bit like that too, right?
I mean, it can be. I also actually see things.
Right.
So, it depends on the moment. I was walking my dog very early one morning and I literally saw a friend of mine in a pink bathrobe in front of me. I tell this story in the book. Was she there? No, but I knew, oh, I need to call her. By the time I got home and fed the dogs and everything, it was kind of late. And she called me and she said, I just knew I needed to call you today. And I said, me too. And I said, so what are you wearing? Because I needed that confirmation. And she said, a gray dress. And I thought, that's so strange. And I said, well, what time did you think about me? And she said, oh, I had just gotten up and put on my pink bathrobe. So, we do also get those messages.
Yeah.
I think we like to try and fix things into really tight definitions because it seems safer, but it's really quite big and fluid.
Yeah, that's beautiful. One of the things that I loved about your book and the work that you did and that you do, and tell me if I'm kind of getting it right, because this is how it landed with me, is looking at the dreams, looking at the dream work, using the dreams as a way to reveal what you call the secret mind, which I want you to explain in just a minute. But also like looking at life that way, our daily life, our waking life, because it's a continuum, right? And, a lot of times in the work that I do, there's a code to life, just like there's a code to your experiences in life, just like there's a way to look at your experiences in dreams. And I think it's more continuous than we think.
Yeah, I mean, something I like to say is whatever we're dreaming at night, we're living in the day, and what we're living in the day, we're dreaming at night. One is verbal and more linear, that's the waking time, and the other is imagery, and it's more fluid, and it moves us beyond that to something that's unexpected.
All right. Can you talk a little bit about the teacher that you had? So you found your teacher in a dream.
I did. So I had a dream in which my deceased father meets me in this very ethereal place. It didn't even feel like a dream. It felt more like a visitation, and passes me on really to a woman with her hair in a bun and a gold phonograph. And I'm mesmerized by the music of this phonograph. And I go towards her and I look and I see my father walking away. And I know I've kind of just, my sense is I've kind of been handed off. And then it took a couple of years and some other experiences for me to meet the person who was my teacher, Dr. Catherine Schoenberg. And it was her teacher that I saw in this image. And I never got a chance to meet her, Colette Abouker-Musquet, because she passed away just a couple of months after I met Catherine.
Wow, that's so powerful. And so you studied with her for many years, and then you took the leap to do this work yourself.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole idea is you train people and then they go out and then they train other people and you pass the baton.
Beautiful. All right. So I have so many warring questions in my brain. All right, this is where my guidance wants me to go right away. They want me to put a dream on the table. Is that okay with you?
Sure.
All right, I'm going to tell you about the dream and then I'm going to tell you about the imagery I get. And I just got tingles all over. So I'm super excited. Okay, so the dream that I had, and I was already thinking about this interview, and I don't have a dream journal. I know that is something that you recommend in the book.
Yep.
And so I did buy a couple journals now because I'm getting more convinced. What I do is something you don't recommend in the book is that when I wake up, I go to my phone and I tell the story into my voice recorder. So I do record my dreams, just not in writing, but I do that before I open any other apps sometimes. And anyway, so this is one I saved for you because it was a really powerful dream. I had it a couple nights ago. And so I was kayaking, which is one of my happy places. And there was a little I was kind of going around a bend, right? And to the right side of where I was at, there was like a little, God, I don't know how to explain it, but like a little nook, right? So it wasn't directly on my path. It was around the bend. There was this little area with a little nook, and then the path kind of continued, right? But in that little nook was a giant snake, like a giant serpent. And it was, like maybe like 20 feet long, like this wide, like it was a big snake. And snake has been an energy I've been working with a lot in my waking life since I moved here to California. And people that follow the show have heard some of my snake stories and some of that evolution with working with their energy. But I had this thought that, like most of the snakes I deal with in my regular life, like I'm not their natural prey, right? So I'm always say that. I'm like, they don't want anything to do with me. I don't want anything to do with them. Like we can coexist and be friends, but they're not interested in me that way. But this guy, he was huge. And I remember having this thought, ooh, like I am his natural prey. And, somehow like, I don't remember this part of the dream, but there was no attack. Nothing happened. I kept, I think that I continued. But what happened afterwards was my brain kept looping within the dream about what I was going to do next time and how this kind of changed the landscape of my kayaking adventures because now I knew that there were predatory snakes out there and that, now I had to, do I take a different route? Do I not kayak anymore? So there was the way our anxiety does for us, right? Like when something happens and then afterwards we're like trying to figure out how to not make it happen. It was like one of those. And I was getting annoyed with myself in the dream because I was looping in my anxiety, which I haven't found to be super helpful in my waking life. And then as I was waking up, I heard very clearly that it was an anaconda. So when I woke up, I looked that up, and apparently there are legends of these huge snakes, but I was not aware of that in my, until I got that word right as I was waking up. So I want to hear what you think about that, and I'm going to tell you what I did, and then you can tell me if that was a good idea or not, or what you think. It was delightful. So anyway, so that was the dream, and it was pretty powerful.
So when you say on my path, you're actually in the water on a kayak.
Yes.
The anaconda's on land.
No, the anaconda was in the water and it was poking
Okay.
its little head out and it was adjacent to me. So again, there was a little, and this wasn't significant in the dream. I didn't think about it this way. It was after kind of reading your book and kind of going back over the dream that I noticed this detail that it wasn't directly on my path. I passed around a corner, I saw it, it was there, but it never threatened me. It was more about the idea that it could.
Mm.
Um, and I feel that I got past it. But it was kind of off to the side. It wasn't threatening me, but it felt like it could at any time.
You know why this dream is so great for us to talk about on your show?
Okay.
So, one of the things I advocate for is people finding their own way through their own dream and not turning to a dream dictionary. Don't go to Google. Because if you do those things, snake, there's going to be
Yeah.
like a one size fits all thing. But one of the key things that you said is I've been doing a lot of work with snakes. So I know that for you, you have a completely different, unique, subjective idea of what a snake is to you. And what dreams do is they speak to our present tense. And in that present tense moment, snake to you in that moment has its own very specific thing to say versus going to a dream dictionary and that sort of thing. So, how do you feel about snakes?
I feel they're very powerful. When I first moved to California, I was really afraid of the rattlesnake because, we didn't have a lot of those on the East Coast or in Michigan where I was from. They weren't really a thing. And here they really are. And I had a real evolution in my interaction with different snakes while I was here. And I think a lot of it had to do with a lot of big changes in my life, a lot of transformation, a lot of working with the energy of my fear, and fear and power and how those two things are kind of intertwined, right? Or we can find our power through that which we fear. And I've had a really harmonious relationship with snakes since they show up at really beautiful times for me. I've telepathically had some great conversations with snakes. I think I've become a bit of a snake charmer. I mean, I love the energy of, I love it when I get to see a snake now. I mean, there's always that moment, when you're about to step on one that you're like, oops, but it's really been an evolution with me with that energy. And I count them among my favorite spirit animals and spirit guides now. And I love the energy of snake. And it feels to me when I tune into it intuitively, like powerful. Like there's a real like power. And this guy felt really powerful. That was like the energy. And again, there was fear in the dream, but when I tune into that big guy now, he feels delightful and just really strong and powerful and exciting.
Yeah, so, the thing that intrigues me the most about this particular dream is that I pass by and everything's fine. And where the little hiccup is then I start to loop back. Why go backwards?
Yeah, I don't know. And it wasn't like I took the kayak backwards. It was like the whole rest of the night, or,
I
my
know.
brain kept looping about, oh my gosh, like, how is the understanding that there are snakes that, I could be their prey is going to impact me? And, will I ever go kayaking again? And I love kayaking.
Yeah, well, our own power can be a lot and something
Yeah.
to be afraid of. What did you
Wow.
do with this dream?
So I was out on a walk, which is my meditative space, and then I tuned back into the dream and I asked myself, what would I like to do? Like what would bring this dream resolution? And what I got was that I wanted to jump in naked and swim with the snake. Which I did. And it was just delightful. We were just dancing together. I was like on its back. You know, swam in and out of its mouth. Like it was really a magical thing. And I don't know. I'm feeling pretty good about it now.
Yeah,
So
good.
that to me was the natural resolution.
Hmm.
That's what it was calling me to do. And I feel now I just have a really big snake among my spiritual friends. And it's
Great.
also quite unlikely in real life that I will encounter an anaconda, but you never know.
One never knows.
Yeah, it's not on my bucket list here in San Diego.
Yeah, but every aspect of the dream is an aspect of the dreamer. So that big, big power is me, and I can be afraid of it or I can jump in and play with it.
Yeah. One of the things that really struck me about your work, and that's the reason why I reached out, is years ago I wrote a dream book for kids, just based on stuff that I was doing anyway in my work with children. And a lot of one of the tools, but this was one that I used a lot. And again, I do everything intuitively. So it just kind of came to me was what when a kid would come and they would have a nightmare or reoccurring dream, we would sit down and we would we would rewrite the dream. Okay, how would you like it to end? What would you like to do differently? And kids found that really empowering. And
Mm.
I learned too, because I'm a lucid dreamer, that, in those moments, if I wake up with a nightmare, what I'll do is after I soothe myself and, get reoriented, I always go back into the dream and, try to affect a more pleasant outcome. So I would love to hear, and that was, part of what I think, your work is about, although I think your work is even more nuanced than that. So I'd love to hear about that because I think that sometimes, like life, we don't feel like we are creative partners in our dreaming experience, right? But that's not true at all.
Creative partners with who?
With ourselves and our dreams and our imagination in
Oh,
that state,
yeah.
right?
I mean, it is us. So, the little distinction I think I would make between what you've just described and what I teach is that we look at unresolved dreams as having a necessity. And that necessity is the place that if all of that energy is sort of bound up and locked up. And if I can address that necessity, then I can unlock that and I can return to balance or homeostasis. So it's not about wanting a more pleasant outcome. That for me would be fantasy and it would be writing a story.
Right.
And it could, I can think of all kinds of fantasies, but if I haven't dealt with the thing that I need to deal with, then it doesn't matter. I'm not going to believe it. So if I'm, for example, running from a monster in a dream, the necessity is to turn around and face it. And so frequently, what we try and do is find a better way to run away or to go underground or do anything to avoid
Right.
the unpleasant experience of turning around and facing the thing that we need to face. But when we do address that necessity, everything changes in a spontaneous way with our spontaneous imagery. So it's not about make believe, it's about truly dialoguing with our body's
Mm.
inner energy, tongue twister, that is showing itself, talking to us in image.
And where does it come from? Where do our dreams come from? What is that wisdom? What is that? I think you use the terms the secret mind.
The secret mind is our inner knowing. And the reason it's a secret is because honestly, we don't pay attention to it when we're awake. We go, 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 go. We're so fast. We've got so many things on our to do list. We don't take the time to just reflect. And it's secret in the same way that the back of our head right now is secret. I don't know what the back of my hair looks like. Maybe it looks good, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. It's a secret to me, but it's not really secret, it's there. And I can use a system of mirrors so that I can see it.
Right.
In the same way, when I'm dreaming, it's showing me through a lot of different objects and people and places and scenarios as a system of mirrors, different reflections of what I'm actually feeling and what I know and what I want to do inside myself.
Beautiful. And so the dreams are what help you tap into that.
Yeah, the dream is literally showing us what we can't see for ourselves in the daytime. So in our daytime moving, we're literally standing up and looking out. And we have a very defined outer looking view. We can't look inside of ourselves and check off a to do list at the same time. So when we get quiet and we tune in, then we're tuning into that inner self and that inner language. And we can do that when we're awake. And when we're dreaming, it just comes up by itself. We lay back, our eyes turn inward, we receive instead of doing.
What do you say to the people that don't remember their dreams or feel like they don't have that connection? How can they start to work with them?
Very easy. You talked about having a dream journal earlier, and it's about having a dream journal by your bed because that sets the intention. Intention is everything, it focuses our energy. So if you just set a dream journal by your bed, get up, write down whatever comes without thinking, is this really a dream? It is. If it's one word, if it's one image, if it's just a feeling, it's a dream. Write it down. And as you start to write it down, either more will come or it won't, but over time, you'll remember more things. Some days you'll remember a lot, some days less.
Beautiful. And then, okay, so we've written the dreams down and we've started to remember them. What do we do next?
So, in the book, I take people, sort of step by step to really understanding first the image, understanding how to move through it on a deeper level, understanding the difference between resolved and unresolved dreams. But very simply, it starts with curiosity. So, what about that dream is, tugging at my curiosity? And even asking the question, if I'm running from a monster in my dream, where am I having some kind of monster situation in my life that I'm avoiding? We get sort of hung up with, well, I don't have a monster in my waking life, but we do because we often use language like, oh my gosh, I've got a nightmare project right now. That's a monster. And if I'm avoiding that in my waking time, my dream might be showing me that in my dreaming time. And the best way to deal with it is to face it.
So, sometimes what happens, and I've never been a master dream interpreter. It's just not my thing. But I think what sometimes happens for me, and a lot of times when I get clients and they say I have a dream and they think I have their magic answers for them on that one, which again, it's not my favorite thing to do, but if my guides give me an answer, I'll pass it along, is we can kind of get hung up in the details, right? We're trying to figure out what that dream means. And it's got to be more nuanced than that, right? Because like you just said, a giant snake could mean something very different to me than it means to somebody else. And sometimes too, is it ever possible that you're going so hard like this that you can't even see what the dream is trying to tell you?
It can be more likely because I find that, we also at the institute that I run, we have a Young Dreamers program. And one of our assignments is to have them go back to their caretaker and ask, have you ever had a dream that showed you something about your life or that you changed your life? And everybody comes back with a story. And so frequently it's parents who said, oh, yeah, I knew that, your mom or dad was the right partner for me, or I knew when I was pregnant with you, or I knew what university to go to, big decisions in life.
Right.
And they knew, even though the dream might have been full of all kinds of imagery, it sparked their inner knowing and it was a strong inner knowing. And so they just went with it. So we do often know. What more likely happens is that we have a belief system that we don't want to change, and we enter the dream from that perspective, how we're living our waking time. I call it the presenting eye. And the dream is trying to show us different ways to look at something to maybe drop that belief system. But if we hold so hard to that and don't see the different perspectives that the dream is trying to give to us, then we trick ourselves.
Wow. So it's about looking at all of the aspects of that dream as aspects of yourself and then inviting them to help you see all the angles.
Well, every aspect of the dream is an aspect of the
Right.
dreamer, but then I have to be open to receive that. And that's where, really, in any kind of spiritual path, that's the big blocker. I don't want to see what I have to change in myself, right?
Got it. Okay. So I see a big snake and it wants to like knock me. Well, it didn't actually, but I'm afraid that it could potentially knock me off of my kayak. Right.
But think
Help
about
me
that
with
right
that.
there. nothing happened.
Nothing
That's what
happened.
strikes me about this dream.
Yeah.
As I said earlier, nothing happens, but instead of continuing forward, I loop back.
Yeah. Yeah. And the looping is right. All right. So how is the dream going to help me not loop?
You already worked with the dream.
So I'm good. It's
You said, I feel good about this dream. So
yeah.
you're the original dreamer. You hold the keys.
I love that.
One of the things that's really important to me is for people to recognize that inside of ourselves, we have all the tools we need to solve our own problems. And so frequently, we hand over those tools to outside forces, either, the economy's bad or LinkedIn hasn't done anything with its algorithms for me, or. But inside of ourselves, we're all capable in our own way. And when we look inside and we start to listen to ourselves and truly listen, then we find that within our imagination, we are able to solve those problems. And truly listening is an art. And so, one of the things that is helpful to help every single person to look inside themselves and grow is starting a dream practice and just recognizing what amount of editing goes into just writing down the dreams. Listen to the self talk. Am I starting to write and I'm saying, oh, this is dumb, or this isn't really a dream, or I would never bring that to a session with Bonnie, I'm too embarrassed, or whatever any of these edits are, that's an indicator of how little or much I'm allowing into my life. There are many, many teachers out there, and I'm talking about situations. I'm talking about just a little piece of information that passes us by from someone in line at the coffee shop, for example. But if I'm constantly shutting the door to all kinds of things and shutting the door to my own inner knowing, then I narrow myself. So just getting a little more curious to listen to me, to listen to how that's resonating in the waking time starts to open up my own imagination and my own perspective taking on what I'm living in the moment. The more we can play with other perspectives, the more we enlarge our field of vision. And that doesn't mean that a piece of information someone shares with me in the coffee shop is something I have to hook, line, and sinker, go all in. But it means that, that might be interesting. Maybe I can play with it. And in the end, maybe no, that doesn't work for me. But being a little more curious and being a little more open.
Yeah. And we talk about that a lot on the show. Two things that you just said that we talk a lot about. One, you have it all inside you. All the answers are there. And that, I always say other information, other people in the world are here to awaken that for you, right? It's kind of you talking to you. In my mind, really, the waking life is just the flip side of the dream life. It's all me. It's all an extension of who I am, right? Just different facets of me talking to me through my waking experience, right? And so you're always in the driver's seat to kind of tune in and know, okay, does this resonate with me? Does this not resonate with me? And I think something else that you said that was implicit in there, but you can stop me if I'm wrong, is that sometimes too we are going like this. We're afraid to look at the different perspective. We're afraid to do anything that's going to challenge our ego's, sense of how we set up this life, of who we are, of who we think we're supposed to be, of how we think things are supposed to work. And that's when life can get really limiting and uncomfortable for us, and that's where our dreams probably have a little bit of the advantage to wake us up, wake us up from the waking dream and say, hey, sweetheart, look over here. There's this thing that you've been missing.
Yeah. I mean, when we go to sleep, the part of our brain that does all of that editing and criticizing is literally taken offline. So, like it or not, we're seeing all these other perspectives. Now, we can wake up and decide, oh, I don't want to see that. or we can see it as a treasure chest that we open every single night and just get curious about it.
Yeah. No, I love that. All right. So you mentioned there's a couple different kinds of dreams that we have. And I'd love you to kind of go over that for people because I thought that was really, really interesting. And I hadn't heard it explained that way before.
Now, there's seven different kinds of dreams, and they kind of fall into two categories, which I mentioned before. There's unresolved and there's resolved. So, an example of unresolved we've talked about is a nightmare, but it also might be a clear dream. And a clear dream is showing us where we're blocked and where we can go, how to get over the block, and our potential, which is a latent potential, meaning we're not seeing it or we're not exercising it because we're so focused on the block. And all of our energy is tied up in the block. So, in a clear dream, there are elements of potential, elements of block, and it's up to us to figure out what potentials do I need to now bring forward and manifest, and how can I do a waking dream exercise like you did for yourself with the snake to go back in and face whatever it is that's blocking me.
Love that. And then you also talk about the resolved dreams. And I want to
Yeah.
share another dream with you because I was
Okay.
thinking, I'm a clear dreamer based on your experiences. I mean, occasionally a nightmare, but most of my dreams are, are shining the spotlight on what's going on. Um, but as a child, I had one really powerful dream, and that I will never forget. And it is a dream that I died in, which, as a child, they say if you die in a dream, you're going to die, but I'm still here. But I don't think that was true. But anyway, and I think I was probably about 7 years old. And it was like a Wild West kind of scenario. And I saw myself in the third person, which is a little bit not normal for a dream as I think about it. And I also felt, but I felt myself and I saw myself. And there was someone else and they were going to shoot me. And I was aware that this was going to happen. And maybe there was a little bit of an apprehension, but there was also a sense of like my time had come and like that this was just inevitable. It was going to happen and I needed to get ready for it. And then I got shot and my whole body felt just filled with this warmth coming from my heart. It was really like the most amazing feeling that I've ever had, this peace, this calm, this bliss. And so, that Tears for Fears line, if any of you guys were around in the 80s, the dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had. Well, it's true. It was one of the most profound and healing dreams that I had when I was 7 years old. Never forgot it. Where would you go with that?
It's so interesting because in a class I was teaching earlier today, there was a question brought of what happens if you die in a dream. And
Synchronicity.
one of the important things that we have to do is learn how to quote unquote die to a certain identity or a certain time or chapter in our life. For anybody out there who's a parent, you are a single person and all the different hats you wear as that. And then as soon as you have a child, you're no longer that person anymore. You might still be able to do single person things like have a movie night or whatever, but it's a completely different experience because now you're a parent.
Right.
So we die to ourselves and old chapters of our life all the time. And if we learn how to do that, it's really about learning how to transform. And so it's a positive thing generally when we can go through such a transformation.
I love that. Yeah, it was definitely a positive dream. Would that have been a resolved dream or a clear dream in your mind?
Do you feel that it's resolved?
Oh, like I said, it was the best dream I ever had. I mean, I don't remember how I experienced it when I was 7.
Yeah,
But it's something that some of those things stick with you. I've never forgot it. And I only have good feelings when I think about it. I think it was making peace with, death. I don't know. I don't know what it
great.
was.
Great.
But that was one of and I think too, sometimes we think, that dreams have to be heavy and hard, which sometimes they are, but sometimes they can be really joyous and remarkable.
Oh, yeah. I wake myself up. I'm laughing so hard in my dreams frequently. So, dreams also help us by giving us really big, joyful experiences. And, you know, we do tend to flatten our daily experiences. We get very busy, we go through routines, it gets very dull, the shine comes off of it. And when we have big dreams that open us out and give us a sense of expansion or some kind of, big feeling, it reminds us that there's more to life than a routine, and that we have an opportunity to bring more of those experiences into our waking time.
I love that.
Mm.
So this is a podcast about intuition. And a lot of people, ask me when I'm teaching about intuition development, how about my dreams? How about my dreams? How can I work with that energy to hear my intuition more? And I think that, that's basically what a dream is. It's a connection to that deeper knowing that we all have. And maybe that's what you mean by the secret mind. But I'd love to get your take on what's the connection between our intuition, that deeper knowing, and our dreams.
I look at it as one is a word for daytime, intuition, and one is a word for nighttime, but it's really the same thing. It's how I'm looking inside myself.
I love that. I love that. And I think too, sometimes for some people, the dream state can be the perfect way to do that because, like you said, that part of your mind that is chattering, that is criticizing, that is shoulding, that is editing is quiet.
Yeah.
And that's when we hear our guidance the most. Beautiful. All right, Bonnie, I ask everybody on the show, and maybe I could guess the answer to this question, but maybe not. I ask everyone on the show, how do you personally experience your intuition?
You want to take a guess?
Well, I'll let you answer.
I mean, I said two different ways already in this
Yeah.
podcast. And one way is in my waking time, something I see, something I feel on my inside. I gave that example of seeing a friend of mine in a pink bathrobe.
Right.
And the other way is in my sleep time, in my dreaming time. So there are many different ways. I actually talked about three different ways that I experience it in this podcast, about seeing something written. Sometimes when I'm perceiving something, I'm talking with someone or something like this, I just see something written in my visual screen, kind of in front of me is how I see it. So it's varied. It depends on the moment. It depends on what's happening.
Those are all beautiful examples. One of the reasons I love asking this question is the diversity of our experiences.
Mm.
It can seem just like you said with dreams, like we're all so unique and we all have our own kind of code or our own kind of language for the way that I see it, connecting with spirit, source, your soul. And so I love asking everyone this question because it is so unique, and your stories are unique to you, and even the way that we think is unique. My daughter once said to me, "Well, doesn't everybody see like words and thought bubbles when they're thinking?" And
Yeah.
I was like, no, I don't see that, but it's really cool that you see that when you think, right? So,
Yeah.
I think that it's just beautiful how we're all so unique. All right,
It
we got to,
is.
oh, go ahead.
No, it is. I'm just saying it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So we got to wind this one down, and it's been just such a pleasure. You're such a wealth of insight and brilliance. So thank you so much for sharing with everyone. Is there anything we didn't get to yet that you want to talk about before we wrap her up?
I think we've covered the basics. Get that
Good.
dream journal and get curious.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to get a dream journal. It's really better to have a dream journal than to pick up my phone and talk to it.
Absolutely. And there's many different reasons why that's the case. So just try it.
Okay. Okay. What are some of the reasons? Convince me.
Well, for one reason, there's a lot of things that our dreaming mind uses to express itself, like little drawings, little squiggles, an intentional misspelling of a word, an intentional strange word that autocorrect corrects. And then later in the day, we don't remember that and it's corrected and there's no record of it. And that's often the juicy part of a dream. That's a big reason why.
All right. All right. Well, I talked to my phone, so there's no autocorrect, but I hear you. I hear you. I'm going to try it. And again, like it was actually after reading your book that it occurred to me too, just that physical thing that the snake was off to the side, right?
Mhm.
I didn't say that the first time I recorded the dream, but afterwards I was like, that's kind of significant. It wasn't on my path. Right.
No.
It was just hanging out to the side. So I think sometimes too, those are the details that we can miss. All right, this was so beautiful, folks. Read the book. I am loving it. It is so beautifully written. It is, and it's just such a unique and magical approach to working with your dreams. So check that one out. And how else can people find you and work with you?
Yeah, you can find me at bonniebuckner.com or Institute for Dreaming and Imagery.com. Both of those are on Instagram. It's either Dream with IIDI or bonniebuckner.com. Just spell out the DOT.
Beautiful. And you have a podcast.
It's a podcast that I co-host for George Washington University's for the One Humanity Lab.
Oh, beautiful. All right. So you guys can check that out too. And all right, I don't know if there's any parting words. I've already asked you that so many times. So I think I'm going to end this one by thanking you for taking the time to speak with me and listeners, and thanking listeners again for tuning in, because of you I get to have these conversations. And I really invite all of you guys to tune into your dreams and set that intention to remember your dreams. It is really powerful and profound work, and it's definitely one of the many tools that I use in my own life, and will probably be using even more now that I have met Bonnie and read her amazing book. And if you like the show, you know what to do: like, subscribe, share, all the stuff. And very most importantly, remember that I love and I'm so grateful to each and every one of you. And namaste.